The next panelists are going to talk all about it. It's about this movement. It's all about embracing science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So the STEM education is a game changer for empowering the next generation. And I can't wait to invite our panelists up. It's going to be hosted by the moderator, Mr. Anthony Fernandes, CEO of Mount Mary High School. Give him a round of applause. You saw him up here at Achievement Award. So now you're going to hear him talk, bring his expertise to the floor, invite his panelists up to the chairs. Everyone has a microphone on stage. Just check, make sure it's on so we can all hear you. Come on up. Welcome, Mr. Fernandes. Thank you for being here. Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel, for the
You're
wonderful
welcome.
introduction. I mean, the kind of energy you have, wow. You started and still have that kind of thing going into you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Anthony Fernandes, I just introduced. I'm privileged to be having the status of a moderator for this panel, which is very interesting. From the morning hours, from the early hours, we have been going through a lot of intense discussion. But what we're going to be touching today is something that we know, but we also don't know. So before I begin inviting my panelists up, let me get a show of hands. How many of us know STEM and STEAM education? Show of hands. Fantastic. The panelists coming up, you know what's your homework now? Let me take the privilege of inviting some esteemed panelists who I have. I start off with the gentleman who received his first award today, Mr. David Ardley. Mr. David is the founding principal of Beech Hall School, Riyadh, the Kingdom's first all-inclusive, non-selective premium school. He was previously an assistant head in Switzerland, and he has also taught in France and in the UK. He studied a 4-year degree in design and technology for secondary education and has been in teaching profession all his career. He's passionate about how design education is delivered at school. Mr. David Ardley, please, could I have you on the stage? Following Mr. David, I have another very, very impressive gentleman by the name of Mr. Michael Lindsey Simpson. Wow, you hear this guy. Michael was a lawyer. Now we get lawyers coming in here from educationists. We had HR guys, we had coaches, and now we have a lawyer. Michael was a lawyer and changed path to physical theater. His theater education in muscle response and impulse work was fundamental in developing techniques to interact with different disciplines and culture in animation and film work. Look from where to where he's jumping. And he's got more. He has further fused this information into corporate landscape, utilizing the art practice to assist a different team of thinking from science, engineering, IT, finance, and management to successfully collaborate on projects-based initiative, and is an associate of EvolveSingapore. Mr. Michael, please. Our third panelist is Mr. Lam Khee Fu. Is he around? Oh, yeah. Mr. Lam Khee Fu is the professor. Professor Lam, he's a professor of architecture and building environment at the National University of Singapore, is a US licensed architect, educator, and researcher who specializes in design support system for total building performance analysis and building diagnostics. He was a consultant for several major awards-winning projects and certified green building in Singapore, China, and the US. He was awarded the 2013 Alexander, I hope I pronounce this right, Squarswat Cop, and I got it right, Prize from the US National Science. Put your hands up to Mr. Pu. Enough of men around, right? We've been having ladies all around the whole day. Let me invite my next panelist, and she is Patricia, Miss Patricia Miss Patricia Farao tells me that she's a Spanish and is a young, dynamic 24-year-old woman walking up there, a co-founder and co-head of the Women in STEM in Amsterdam, heads the Science Student Council of Vrije University of Amsterdam. These positions were during her MSc students into neuroscience and international public health in Amsterdam. And yeah, she's come all the way from there to be able to connect to us, to our subject matter. My last panelist for today is another beautiful woman, and she goes by Sakhaa Bandar Alsaedi. I hope I got her name right. Sakhaa, are you around? Yeah. Sakhaa is a founder and CEO of Medvation. To keep it very interesting, those of you who are looking forward for the discussion that we're going to be carrying forward on STEAM and STEM, Sakhaa, though being a PhD student, is also specialized in tools for STEM labs, for fab labs. Let's know all about this as we go and we take into the discussion. Sakhaa is from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. So when I asked you this question, my dear audience, and I'm going to keep it a little informal because I tell you why. I have got no specific questions in my mind what I can prepare, but I've got a zillion of things to talk about. The idea behind what we want to connect with my panelists down here is to be able to reach out and connect to the topic, STEM education, conditioning the new generation with innovative teaching. Since I got a few hands going up, understanding that most of you are not aware of STEM and STEAM education, I would bring in my panelists to give a brief introduction, and I would start it with David. Could you do that?
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all and see you over lunch, and lovely to be here. My journey is slightly different in a way, because I don't know any difference in education since the kind of early 70s right through, because I've studied design education as a kid. I did it as my degree, a 4-year B.Ed in design and technology, and I've taught it all my career, and now I'm in a school, leading a school, I believe passionate about design education. Ironically, though, design isn't in the acronym for STEM and STEAM. So I've been watching STEM, STEAM come into the fore in the past, probably 8 to 10 years, and seen it in education. But I've never not seen what that activity, which is currently happening, not be in schools, if that makes sense. So for me, education, and certainly design education, has always been about anthropology and not technology. It's about improving the quality of products and services and what we do for humankind. And kids are brilliant at doing that. It's not about the technology side of it. I'm passionate about using technology to support delivery, not just in STEM, STEAM, but in languages, humanities, you name it, sports science. But it's not, it's a tool to support. What I'm interested here with the panel today, and with hearing from you guys and girls out there, is how STEAM and STEM has been adopted in a curriculum perspective, and how the aspects, we can go back to Don Norman and all the thought process from MIT going back, but how design thinking is brought to the fore in terms of planning our curriculums, planning best thing for our kids in our care, planning for the design of the environments that we deliver this stuff to in schools, the design of schools, and all of that. But discreetly, no one in this room argues that we shouldn't have maths, technology, engineering, and so on and so forth. But I am curious why we kind of separate it from languages and history, for example, when we're talking about culture and development and so on and so forth. And I was interested earlier when we were talking about, the first panel this morning was talking about the
mindset.
The mindset, yeah, Generation Alpha. And that's cool and looking at the generations going ahead. But if you think about it, everyone in this room was responsible for getting a load of children through COVID and through to where we are today over the past 30 or so years. So that's quite a good accolade as well in terms of what we've done before all this artificial intelligence, the clue's in the name, artificial, and all of that type of thing. So that personal stuff, it's about human beings and it's about talking with people, but this is why I'm here today, because I'm really interested to see where we go on this journey over the next 40 minutes or so. I'll be quiet now.
You finished?
No. And, yeah, I have gone. Go.
Thanks, David. I guess I'm doing STEAM education in the corporate classroom. I've been involved now with a variety of projects involving IT engineers, architects, and they're going into different countries almost to deploy some of their projects. So I was brought in as a consultant to work out some of the issues different cultures have and different work streams have within those projects. And that came back to my arts background in theatre, where we looked at reflection in action, in interacting with different cultures and interacting with different work streams. How do we actually communicate with each other? So we introduced a whole different modules, if you like, in getting different work streams working together towards one goal. So that's my interest with STEAM in the corporate classroom. So I'm going to hand it over to yourself, sir.
All right, well, good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm an architect, as have been introduced, and an educator. There are many, many schools of architecture around the world, and you will find different schools emphasizing different things, then they get branded or known for certain approaches to architecture and to design. But my personal experience in engaging in this field is motivated by a quote from an architect, Louis Sullivan, who said that architecture is the crystallization of the thoughts and feelings of a civilization. That inspired me no end. That talk about inclusiveness, that's inclusiveness, because we are all part of that architecture and the built environment. Now, in executing that, of course, there is the art and the science of design, as has been said. And from young, I've always believed that. 47 years ago, when I picked architecture school, I deliberately went to a school in UK, in Nottingham, that had this, what we call double majors today. In those days, are very rare, extremely rare. But I went, and it was in Nottingham University. And they really grounded us in both the art and the science. So much so that when they said, we're going to teach you about environmental science, 40% of our degree grade is in that area. So it wasn't just a lip service. And I think that sort of commitment and seriousness of doing it, as I said 47 years ago now, had really continued to inspire me and continued to help in my work even today. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as Anthony said, I am a student. I'm finishing my master's in Amsterdam, actually, and I have really broad experience in STEM, 21 years of experience in STEM, since I've been studying that since I'm 3 years old, 24 now. So for me, there's two main concepts, STEM and STEAM. STEAM came slightly after STEM. STEM, for me, it's a little bit of the hard skills, what we say hard skills, right? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's what I've been taught in school for many years, university, in many countries. And then there's STEAM. This STEAM adds the term art. And it's supposed to be in there, related to the other four fields, as a way of implementing creativity and curiosity that have to be innate, or maybe you can learn as well, of those terms in scientists, in engineers, in mathematicians, and in people in technology. We're going to speak about these terms a little bit more today, but I just wanted to make clear that for me, the difference is STEM, about hard skills. STEAM starts to dive in more about soft skills that are also very necessary.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the conference organizer to have me in this panel, and I would like to thank them for their effort for gathering these kind of educators and makers in one room that discussed about education. Regarding to why I'm here, I would like to discuss how can we engage STEM and the STEAM in creating customized curriculum for kids by utilizing AI. So I don't think I need to add more about what our colleague they said about this difference between STEM and the STEM, because I think I agree with all what they said. But mainly, we focus in STEM in raising the art part there, and how can we use these parts of STEM, even science, education, science, engineering, arts, and as well as mathematics in deliver such a curriculum that focus to show those kids how they utilize their skills to support STEM education.
Well, panelists, the first round, I just wanted you to, sorry. Just my throat is gone dry. Just wanted you to introduce the STEM and STEAM, but I would now take it to how you would like to comment. We'll not run through the complete session of each one answering. So understanding STEM and STEAM in elementary education, I mean, what's interesting to know that it is something to do with interpersonal approach into, interdisciplinary approach into cohesive learning. Given the fact that we all practice various different kinds of teaching learning methods at the different locations where we come from, why do you see this STEM and STEAM as a need of an hour? David.
Well, thanks, Anthony. That's a good one. Look, there's no doubt in my mind that one of the things we need to educate on with children is how to think. One of the things schools are really good at, let me rephrase that. One of the things that some schools are very good at is stamping out any idea of what I would call future forging or thinking in a kind of crazy ape way. You know, we can't do that, that's unrealistic and so on. But actually, kids are brilliant at actually coming up with really, really cool ideas. And I think how we manage that in the classroom, in what we do is important. I think this is where STEM and STEAM comes to the fore, and I'll give you a very quick example. As I said, as founding principal of this new school, my first principal role, I made the massive mistake of asking my students to get involved in the design of the school uniform, because I went from everything from kind of Gucci, Fortnite skins and kind of Tommy Hilfiger, right down to, you know, kind of a traditional school uniform, and then all the cost and sustainability and everything else that came into it. And my school at the moment is from kind of 3-year-olds through to 12-year-olds. So to stifle any thought process there would have been wrong, but to actually educate them and bring it down to about material science, the costing, the maths, the entrepreneurship. And that's where I started, my first time, to be honest with you, where I saw the STEAM aspect coming into play, because they were dragging into it all the aspects that I need. For me, maths and science are at one end, art is at the other, design sits in the center, and there's this kind of wavelength that hits across the two, and where design gets the benefit of all these areas of the STEAM kind of area. And so for me, Anthony, coming back, that was, yeah, that justified for me the whole reason why STEAM is so important. But we didn't go to a classroom and teach STEAM. It was an organic thing that came out of a project brief.
Okay. Sakhaa, having you said that you specialize with tools that could help correlate and bring in the hands-on expertise towards the understanding. The question where it comes in is that cross-discipline collaboration of subject matters with the tools that you design, how is that you keep in mind to bring out the best from the student?
Okay, actually the way that when we develop a kit or education learning tool that we put customized on-demand courses or a workshop. So for example, we focus on a specific subject. Let's say we want to talk about bioinformatics, and we want to teach kids, for example, how they extract DNA, how they analyze this information, and how to use a STEM style in their analyzing the problem. So actually, when we think about that, when we design this kind of kit, we put some goals that we want to achieve. For example, we design the kit as a sample. For example, we can say that we put them some electronic sensors, and teach them some programming, and to develop this kind of tool to teach them, for example, how can they analyze the DNA while having fun. Let me give an example. For this purpose, STEM, it's a style of education. So each box or each educational tool, they have some customized curriculum for the teachers. So we want to teach them how to be a researcher, and how they think very thoughtful question about the problem, and how they engage together as one team to solve this problem, and understand this by having hands-on activity. So kids at the end, they will learn and benefit from this knowledge and this complex topic while having fun. And that's a way that we deliver STEM. Because I believe that STEM is not necessarily to be in a kit or for a specific tool. STEM everywhere. For example, if you go to the grocery and ask your kid to just, for example, count how many apples there, how many pineapples, and so on, and how to distinguish between them. These kind of questions that make more thoughtful idea about how these kids can analyze real problem that can save us, solve it from the real life. That's what I think about these kids.
The challenges, Michael and Mr. Fu, the challenges that you talked to me about the training that you're trying to bring out with in the corporate segment further to the STEM and STEAM. How do you see, what are the challenges you face in bringing up the change with the existing team in the corporate world?
Gosh. I think there's a number of ways of looking at that. Okay. So I'm dealing with a project now. A major financial house is offshoring its operation into India and also in the Philippines. So this runway that they've given both countries to adopt is causing a huge amount of problems in regards of adaptation. And the adaptation process is at all levels. So to answer your question, some people have already mentioned today going top down. There needs to be an education and adoption at senior management in regards to the worth of this type of education that will save a lot of time on the ground when these projects are rolled out. So that's where it would need to start first, and we've started to do that education process now with C-suite executives to see the advantage of cross-disciplinary collaboration in thinking, and then also how to interact in that thinking with other divisions.
When you talk of act, are you relating anywhere which behavior?
Sorry, say that again.
When you talk of act, are you relating it anything with behavior skills, or?
Absolutely. A lot of it isn't the technical skills, it's how they interact with each other from different disciplines and how they understand each other's point of view. That is the major benefit of this kind of STEAM system, that they haven't been taught in the classroom. So to go back to your earlier question, what is the advantage of this type of education? If it's taught in the classroom at an earlier age, it would make these kind of rollouts in the corporate sector a whole lot easier, a whole lot easier.
All right. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the STEM and STEAM also talks fundamentally about problem solving, discovery, invent, perseverance, and also fostering learning through hands-on. I don't know which of you would like to take this to answer it. Please.
I could do it. Yeah, in our architecture program, I think one of the things that we continuously remind ourselves as teachers is that we got to walk the talk. And we have to, practice what we preach. If we're teaching architecture and we want to talk about systems integration, the art and the science, the aesthetics, and all the building performance like lighting, acoustics, air quality, you got to show that the space that our students are learning in, indeed, are of that standard. If we don't do that, it's just all talk. So I've been very privileged and honored and to have the opportunity, both in Singapore now and US, as well as previously at Carnegie Mellon, to do that. And to be able to really bring the theory and the practice together, the research and the translation, working with the professional teams to deliver not just, standard solutions, but with a goal, with a name of the future, because we are training students of the future. So this experiential component, as many people have said this morning as well, is so critical. So our goal was to create net zero energy buildings and to create buildings that are well certified. How many of you have heard of the well certification of buildings? Oh, okay. All right, so someone did. So just go Google, well, IWBI. So there are now scientific sort of approaches and methods to certify buildings for wellness, not just for sustainability, not just for energy. So that's something that I think all of us, we work in buildings, whether you're a teacher or you're an administrator, right? We all are accommodated in buildings. Let me ask, talking about my earlier definition of engaging, or how many of you had any say in, large or small, in the space or building that you work in now? 3. I think we need to work much harder to engage everyone in that process of creating our teaching and learning environment, wherever you are, and in the offices as well. I think this is so critical, especially in the light of major changes that many folks have talked about, right? Not just in the technology, but in climate change and the way we learn. Our lighting system may not be conducive to students using computers because they were done during the Industrial Revolution age, for example. Okay? We pay very little attention to indoor air quality until COVID. I always joked with the students, I said, you guys are not paying attention or falling asleep, not because the teacher is bad. The teacher is good. The CO2 level is very bad in the space. So when the CO2 is high, everybody goes, right, sleepy. So it's not the teacher's fault. So we need to embrace that holistic approach and really engage in the process wherever you are, in whatever position or role that you are, because it is really a crystallization of the thoughts and feelings of everybody in our built environment.
Thank you.
May I add something to that? Actually?
Sure, please go ahead. Be comfortable.
Thank you. So I wanted to agree and also add on the comment that my colleague Michael made before. So with an example, imagine you're students. We've all been students here, I think. You've been, I don't know how many years, probably a lot, studying something, in my case, science. You're very motivated, sometimes more, sometimes less, studying these really hard skills, getting the most of the knowledge that you can get. At a point, you stop and you're like, for what? How am I going to use this? Where am I going to use this knowledge that I'm acquiring now, according to my strengths and weaknesses? And this is where the behavioral skills that we were speaking about before come in stage. No one has told you before that you need this in order to choose what's the best option for you after graduation. And you're approaching graduation and you're asking yourself, where do I suit better? I have the skills, but my whole class have these skills probably, the hard skills, the knowledge. But my colleague has not the same capacities as me. We're probably not going to be the best both in the same position, right? So that's why I think adding the A in STEM, converting into STEAM, It's a first step, still has to be modified, but first step to implement this also in education. That has to be from very little, not only university, but has to start, I don't know, in K-12 probably.
In fact, interestingly, I think the audience should be knowing that we are on a discussion of STEAM, but there's also something called a stream that's now coming in. The acronym of R been added, which I think one of our panelists today, Mr. Raju, who said he specializes in reading. And R in stream is now for reading that is coming into it. But coming back to the adaptability of looking this at the elementary education, we have, whether we agree or not, we have a very silo teaching approach towards a teacher to a subject. Okay, and then he or she may have a limitation of the knowledge of another subject to collaborate with it, and then to add IT to it, which will not be there in them. Where does the problem lie? Does the problem lie in the build-up of the teacher's training program? Which, if STEM and STEAM is here now for the last 10 years, then why in the methods or the teaching program, this is not yet brought in? Why has it not been trained? Why have they not been trained for it? We are talking of students wanting to implement it, but why are the teachers or the facilitators not been trained into it?
If I may, Anthony, I don't see STEM, STEAM as a discrete subject, and that's the thing. I think there are subjects which contribute to STEAM and STEM activity. And so the way in which, from what I've seen in schools and the way I understand it, is you kind of, it's project-led, you have a brief, you drag then your subject specialists to it, your science teachers, your maths teachers, your art teachers, your design teachers, and you work on a brief and you deliver it. I don't think STEM and STEAM, as I said, is a discrete subject, but it's an application of a number of subjects. And those subjects need to have a worth and be, dare I say, designed into the curriculum so that it can be delivered. And there are two things which I think STEM and STEAM activity struggles with. First is the facility, coming back to the gentleman talking about architecture. Having a space like this to bring groups in and do work on a collaborative nature, that's one thing. Because as educationalists and as beasts of tradition, you know, we do this from 9:30 to 10:15 and then 10:15 to 20. So you don't have that kind of opportunity to say, well, this might take an hour, let's just crack on. And if it takes longer, it's not a problem. But oh, there's the bell and we have to go. And you have all those practicalities coming in. To offer it as a degree at discrete level or something like that is not going to happen. You need your mathematicians, you need your sciences across physics, chemistry, biology, environment, and what have you. And I think that will not change. You need the knowledge. But then where you take it and apply the knowledge with children so that they can get the best out of it by putting a brief to them so they can collaboratively work. And the panel before, we're talking about the emotional kind of side of teachers and things. I mean, teachers for me in the profession are some of the most emotive people I've ever met in my career. And they do lead on that emotive side. And that personal skill with children, inspiring them to get the best out of them, whether it's STEAM activity or not. But for STEAM specifically, you need someone to drag those kids to that task. And then drag the teachers, your colleagues, to the task with the specialisms, and then make it work through the products that that we're bringing into the game. And yeah, and for me, it is a practical thing. You know, whether you're doing maquettes in prototypes for building design with children, you give children that brief, they run with it because they've got no constraints. They don't know the problems. And so they go with it, and they go really crazy ape. And if you've ever done it, and I've done it, for those who are involved in running schools, if you give your children the opportunity to design a curriculum, it's nothing like you've ever seen, and it's really brilliant. How you actually practically implement it is something else, but the design thought process for youngsters and what they want to do, fantastic. But that's the thing. So I don't think you could ever teach it as a discrete thing, Anthony. I think you still have to have those elements of discrete subject involvement.
I tend to agree with that. In the corporate classroom, they've tried to actually use it as a competency for leadership. And I've kind of fought against it because it's on a per-project basis that you develop the skills for. And you still need the people in IT, you'll still need the finances, a bit like what you were saying, you'll still need those people, but then they have to combine together and collaborate on a particular project. And you can't define that because that project will change every time. It won't be the same. So you can't get a list of principles that's going to cover every project that teams are going to coordinate or collaborate on. The learning is how you interact at that moment with those particular people from different cultures or different learnings. That's part of the process we've been trying to introduce into the corporate classroom, that is a spontaneous learning rather than I have to fit this into the learning they've given me about this particular STEAM project.
On that thought, I want to ask a question to the audience. We all are facilitators in one way or the other, right? If we ask a student to do a project and the student fails to either bring the project or the project what is brought doesn't function, what do you do as a facilitator to your child? Would you give him grades? Would you give him a F, failed? Or give him a remark, not done well? What would you do? Please come up to mic. You can have this.
Good afternoon. It's not about the failure or the success. What matters or what is important there is the effort that has been put in genuinely for that project work that has been done. And as we heard in the morning, every failure has a story to tell. So best is to, at that point of time, is to understand the child, how it has been done, and even if it is a failure, what has gone into the mind of the child to bring that concept into the paper. That has to be understood first. And that is where I think most of the education nowadays should be going towards, and some of the advanced schools are focusing in that line. And which is the education, not the score that matters, the knowledge or the effort or the understanding, the concept of the child that matters, and that we should nurture to make a brighter future for the child and the future leader. Thank you.
That's exactly where I wanted to derive my point, and we have one more beautiful woman walking up here.
Okay, I think it's on. Well, I think first of all, if you fail, that is absolutely excellent. If you fail and you receive that F, you have a very, very good body of data in front of you that is telling you that the criteria was wrong. So instead of having this binary view of education, that it's right or wrong, black or white, in or out, you need to read the data. And that data is telling you that as a principal, we may not have set the right criteria from the get-go. So it's back to the drawing board. It's back to the feedback loop. So the F for failure actually stands, in my opinion, for feedback loop. Thanks.
Thank you. The reason why I asked this question is I wanted to connect to two things. If you read the biodata of Edison, it's very important, it's very interestingly written down there, the man who generated electricity to motion movies, when he was generating electricity in the first bulb, he failed 1,000 times. But when I asked him that you failed 1,000 times, his answer was that I had 1,000 different approaches till I do achieve what I got. And if you look at the youth and the present generation, we're talking of the Generation Z and all those things that have been happening for morning, acceptance of failure is a big question mark with that generation too. Acceptance of failure. But going further, on the topic of what we are, I want to come to Sakhaa, further to the tools of the STEM, what you're developing for students. How big in size, or how practical it is, or is it designed in a way that one kit can be used into multiple subjects or multiple disciplinary? Could you elaborate and talk to us something on that?
Yeah, as I mentioned, mainly we focus on one goal in the beginning. So for example, we want to teach them about the space. But this kind of topic, it just, we want to be, come up with the new topics and trendy technology that we are having these days. But in the same time, each kit that deliver all the STEM components. So we want to build a brain that can think creatively, that can solve the problem at the same time, and that can engage with the team. So the kit, it delivers not only always for one person, it will be a teamwork. Because when you are trying to teach or educate a children, you have to make all his energy that with you and interact with you, so you can understand how you can build this small brain to be a scientist or a future leader by this delivering this kind of kit that puts all these goals in one kit, but focus on a specific concept, complex concept or complex topic.
There's a flash up come up to me, time up, but before I could close, I would let you know that there'll be a lot of questions down here, and I would like the audience, if you may, Rachel, the audience to ask any question to the panelists down here.
We had some engagement. We'd love to invite one special person up for a question. They got a few minutes before we go to the next, which is a fireside chat, but great conversation. Steam, up, here we go. Come on up to the mic. Please introduce yourself. We'd love to know who you are.
Hello panelists and everyone here. My name is Peter Thomas Sudiasa Phillips. I'm an educator and disruptor. In my experience, when we look at STEAM, the stem of STEAM comes to nature. So how do you see perhaps the most intelligent life force that has existed for 4.5 billion years? How do you see the role of nature within education and your work?
Thank you. Anthony, may I answer?
Please.
Or have a go?
Please.
That was a deep one, Peter. Thank you very much. From my perspective, when I'm starting with children on the journey of design, I basically say that unless it's grown out the ground or come from a human, someone has sketched the solution to that problem. And if you think about it, all of us in here, from the clothing we wear, the food we're eating, the jewelry, the textiles, the whole thing, someone has come up with an idea with that. So I kind of reverse engineer exactly what you've said and said, how has this arrived here if it's not from a nature standpoint? And then the children suddenly kind of work with that. And it goes from everything from environments and buildings. As I said, you know, most GDP in most countries is food, drink, and textiles. You know, all things other considered, you know, oil and so on and so forth. But that's what drives. And in STEM and STEAM, quite often, you don't see an awful lot of food, drink, textiles going on in terms of design, and it kind of happens after schools in tertiary education and thereafter. But if you get it in with the children at the beginning, then the environment, then the sustainability comes on board, because they're designing products which have to have a life cycle, whether it's repurposed or, you know, or what have you. And so I think it's very important to do it that way, if that makes sense. So I reverse engineer what you've just said.
We're doing that with CEOs. We're taking them back to the classroom and reversing their thinking in regards to this particular approach, because they have never been educated that way.
I tell you, this topic is so diverse, I can just go on for a couple of more hours, but then time constraint makes me just stop down here. Before I could thank my panelists, I think we are all open to the fact that we need the change, right? Every stakeholder, right, from policymakers to we as facilitators, need to bring in a change. And I would like to close, as I thank my panelists. Thank you very much for all your insight that you've been able to put on this panel. I would like to close this panel with a statement from me, and I wish everybody gives me a year. Today's learning is somebody's experience. Today's learning is somebody's experience. Make your experience a learning for someone else. Good afternoon, goodbye, and see you on the other side.
Wonderful. Give them a hand. What a great panel. Thank you, guys. Stand right up here. Don't go anywhere.